everybody. We're with Hugh today. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Not too bad.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys again.
It's been a while, yeah. Not COVID related either.
No, just life.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just lazy.
Yeah, that's a lot of money too.
All right. So Hugh's a physical therapist. He's has some great credentials. Can you speak to them?
My credentials.
Yeah.
Well, I've been OCS certified, FMS, SFMA, strength and conditioning specialist. I've done a lot of that stuff. I'm a certified kettlebell instructor under Powell for years now. And
That's the legitimate kettlebell instruction.
That's the two legitimate ones are the RKC and the SF1. Powell left RKC and started FS1, but when I was certified, he was still with the RKC. Before that, they're both basically the same. Those are the two that everybody kind of look up to. That's sort of the gold standard. And I use a lot of that with my therapy patients, and if they can, higher level people, more athletic, will get into some kettlebell stuff, and
I'm trying to remember when you were with us. Do you bring them to the clinic? Do you have the kettlebells in the clinic? I don't remember seeing them. It's been a while.
I brought just some light ones.
Light ones. Okay.
Yeah, we had kettlebells, and then after you left, I brought in mine, and I said, no.
Yeah.
I want to keep them home.
We don't have quite the athletic population at our side, but
No.
Right. We can still utilize them a little bit.
No, they're great for a lot of different things, though, even with the population that we work with. But,
yeah, they are. You can do some lower level stuff, and I'll even I work at a gym right now, or out of a gym, and I've done in-services with the trainers to teach them proper form, because like anything, kettlebell is a tool, and you can use a tool incorrectly, and you don't want to blame the tool if you do something, you get an injury, kettlebell's bad, or a barbell's bad, or this is, no, it isn't, it's how you use it.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure when our trainers are teaching somebody that they're using the proper technique and they know how to do it. So
there's a lot of people out there that are afraid of barbells.
Yeah.
Barbell's no good for me.
Yeah, exactly. There's no bad exercise. There's no bad piece of exercise equipment. It's just doing them improperly, using a proper form, or not using them the way they're intended to be used is how people get hurt.
Do you think that people are they tend to avoid the technique, or tend to get hurt more often because of they're so restricted with their motion, or restricted with their technique due to the fear of the equipment or fear of the movement?
I wouldn't say the fear, only because I think if they use it, they're not afraid of it.
Right.
But I think the restrictions in just, for example, one thing that's a pet peeve of mine is a lot of people do that, what they call it the American swing with the kettlebell now, which is two hands on one kettlebell and they swing it all the way up over their head.
Oh, yeah.
The problem with that, there's probably a very small percentage of the population, single digits, that even has the ability with thoracic mobility, low back stability, shoulder mobility, to be able to do that correctly. So there's a lot of people that are doing that, and they don't even have the capabilities to do it. And even if you have the capabilities to do it, are you stabilizing your core enough?
Yeah.
Because once you get that overhead with two hands on the same kettlebell, something's got to give.
Right.
If your thoracic spine is not going to extend, well, guess where you're going to get it? In your low back.
Right.
And guess what you're going to hurt?
Right.
I had a friend who, a PTA I used to work with years ago. I used to work for the Army, ran a clinic there for 5 years. And he hated kettlebells, he told me, because he said they hurt his back and couldn't do the swing. And I said, well, let me look at your form. And I couldn't stop him soon enough because his form was terrible, And I said, well, the reason you hurt your back is because you're doing it. I showed him how to do it correctly once he caught on. And this kid was a high-level athlete. He used to do heliboarding, he called it. Yeah, where they dropped him out of a helicopter and he'd go down. He would do, rock climbing. He was a D1 wrestler in college. You know what I mean? So this kid was an athlete,
Right.
But he tore his back up, by doing a lot of the stuff he did. And once I showed him the correct form and he got it down. He loved the kettlebell swing. He overdid it to the point that because he felt better after doing it.
Sure.
So he took one exercise that he hated because he hurt himself doing it, or it hurt his back. Once he learned how to do it right, it actually made his back feel better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is the whole point of learning how to do it right. And,
perfect practice makes perfect, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But as far as the American swing is concerned, I haven't seen it. And, I use kettlebells myself, but is that even functionally relevant? Going above your head with two hands like that?
Yeah, well, what they say, from what I hear, from what people say that do it, they say, wow, you have to use more force to get the kettlebell up, but then you also have to use a lighter weight.
Yeah, but what about momentum? The momentum's going to pull them up there.
Well, once you get to a certain point, you have to use more arms to get it up overhead. Where a kettlebell swing, the Russian swing, which is the standard swing, is more it's all hips.
Right.
There's no arms. Once you get up there, your arms sort of float for a second, and then it starts to come down. Then you use your lats to drive it down, and hips throw it up. If you want to go overhead and you want that extra work, well, why not just do a snatch, which is
That's
one-handed.
my question. That's my point.
Exactly. So you can do the snatch, and then because it's only one hand on the bell, it allows for more rotation of the thoracic spine, which two hands on the bell do not allow for the rotation of the thoracic spine. And that's where the injuries start coming into play, because people can't do it, and then they force it back there. So they're either going to injure their shoulder, their neck, or their low back.
That's what I'm trying to relate it to function. So I'm thinking about what functional purpose what task would you use that American swing for? Maybe, let's say you're picking up a tire or a log from the long side, but that's more of like a clean and jerk. It's not an American swing.
Yeah, that would be more,
it doesn't make any sense to me why that would even be something you'd be interested in doing, considering the functional relevance.
We try to, I say this all the time, we try to Americanize things.
Yeah.
Which we take something that works really well and let's do something crazy with it, because see, now it's harder. Look at this. Look what I did. We changed it. Why? You don't need, sometimes things just work. They're fine.
Okay.
You don't need to, like I said, you have to go all the way overhead. We have the snatch. If you want to do heavier weight, do very heavy swings, normal Russian swings. Mm-hmm. And you can build a lot of cardio, a lot of strength. Mm-hmm. Believe me, there can be a lot of work. You take a 100-pound kettlebell, and do 6 swings with that, you're going to work.
Well, not even 100 pounds. 45 is good enough for me,
Well, yeah, no, that's a great weight.
100 pounds,
Yeah, but if you're doing if you're doing two-handed swings, you want to work power. And this is the thing. It's like everything has its place, I'm not against any other kind. I mix and match my workouts, but
I think the single arm is like you said, it allows for more rotation.
Yeah.
Not just within your spine, but through the hips as well.
Yeah, and it works core. Two hands, you work a lot of core with the kettlebells, but
I think you get more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
In other words, I do. I think it's more functionally relevant, and I think you get more bang for your buck.
Yeah. The one hand, you work more rotational,
mm-hmm.
Or even anti-rotational forces. So another way to work core. So
has anybody done the American swing and let go of the weight when it was up top?
Oh, I don't know. Not that I want to
believe it happens.
I'm sure.
So I would say Hugh told me, I told him that I was doing them, and I said, I'm doing this, that, and overhead with 2 hands. He goes, don't ever do overhead with 2 hands. I'm like, okay. And I kind of almost innately knew that I shouldn't do that, but I saw it on TV, and I'm like, well, that looks cool. But so then obviously I stopped. But I don't know. That's pretty good to know. And I could see how that now would affect the back and lead to some injuries.
Oh, sure.
But I've also felt with the 2 hands going overhead, I almost lost control of it going backwards behind me.
And that can happen too. You get so much force.
Yeah. Because you got to slow it down and stop it overhead before it goes.
Yeah, I just don't think there's any functional relevance with that at all. That's why I do it. If I'm going to put 2 hands above me on one tool,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to probably be working on driving down, which is more consistent of like pulling it down or throwing an axe down or a ball. Or you're driving, but it's completely the opposite. You're driving it down as opposed to driving it upward and holding on for dear life.
Well, at the time, as with many people, I wasn't thinking about functional relevance.
Yeah.
Now at that, I was thinking, I was getting into it. Like I really enjoyed picking them up and using them and swinging them. And it was just like, what else can I do? What else can I do? I was just having fun, and forgetting about the functional relevance of exercise and what I was doing.
So I think that's I'm probably nerding out a little bit with functional relevance, but
A little bit.
I might be. But I mean, when it comes to exercise, I think that it should be.
It is important.
I think if you're exercising or if you're just being physically active, everything comes with a risk for sure. But you walk away from that exercise with lower risk, for injury, and you have more freedom of motion, and you have more power, agility, strength, whatever it is. An exercise like that, I don't see what the gains are going to be, or what the gains would be if there are gains, what they would be used for, outside of the cost-benefit ratio of injury. But let me ask you this: you've done the functional movement screen, for a long time. How do you feel about doing the two-handed, the overhead squat as far as a screening tool? I know they've talked about taking that away or modifying it.
Well, the overhead squat, I gotta remember, it's just a screening tool. It's not something that they're like. You're not supposed to exercise any of the screens. Like you're not supposed to work on. It's the overhead squat's a great general assessment. If you do good on the overhead squat, even a 2, on the FMS score, you can say, oh, they're going to do well overall with the screen.
I see.
You know what I mean? So it's just a screen to what they found when they were. I don't know if I can use names of these guys who.
No, you probably should.
But again, not my thing. But this is what when I took the certifications, they say that originally people would do bad in the overhead squat, and they would work the squat, work the squat, work the squat. And what they found is they never got any better. It was like banging their heads against the wall.
Right.
Then what they would say, well, you know what? Let's get away from the squat and let's work on core strength or mobility training. And then when that section of the screen got better, and then they went back and retested the squat, all of a sudden their squat got better.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like you stay away from sometimes the big 3, and you work on the smaller parts. You work on, and the big ones to work on is, core, mobility, things like that. What I've kind of found with therapy and using the FMS, it's a lot in the hips.
Oh yeah,
hips are huge.
Good
Hips, thoracic spine, and this is the stuff a lot of people stay away from. Let's mobilize the low back. Let's core strengthening, which is great too. But it's like, look at the hips. If they don't have good hip mobility, if they don't have good thoracic mobility, really nothing else works. Those are kind of your linchpins.
And they're general patterns that you see in almost everybody.
Yep.
But you certainly do see like Olympic lifters and even CrossFit, individuals. They do overhead squats.
Yeah.
They train to overhead squats. And again, my thought is, what is the functional relevance? And what's the risk for injury there too?
Yeah, I mean,
especially if they're restricted.
Yeah, a lot of stuff like with CrossFit and stuff, it seems like you're just training exercise to get better at exercise.
That's right.
And like what you said, functional relevance. Again, this is a master. He was a master RKC guy. He was a master strong first guy too. Under Paolo, and he followed him with that initially. Now he's kind of on his own, and again, I'm not going to use his name just because whatever. But I do a lot of his programs, with kettlebells, and I follow his stuff a lot. But one of the things he said is, exercise should enhance your life. If you're so sore or injured after exercising that you can't move, what good did it do you?
Right.
You want to be able to exercise so that you can move faster. Your kid's getting sick and you got to grab them and get them into the bathroom. Do you want to be? Wait, hold on. No, can't move that leg. Or I just injured my back or my. You want it to enhance your life. You want to move better.
Thinking of my powerlifting friend, we're at a wedding, so he's dressed up and he drops something on the ground. And he looks at it and goes, well. I guess that's going to stay on the floor.
Do I need that?
But that is something that we've been talking about lately, like the benefits of weight training versus like calisthenics and parkour and even kettlebells. We didn't really talk about kettlebells, but I think of kettlebells outside of the traditional weight training.
Yeah.
And I think with weight training, there's all these different versions of these different exercises because you're trying to isolate this and do this and that. I think it's fine, but what it does is it restricts your mobility, and you train that restriction. And then eventually down the road, you get injured. Like we said before earlier this week, there's not a bodybuilder alive, a power lifter alive, Olympic lifter alive that doesn't have serious injuries.
You said that this morning.
I may have. But the point is, like, goes back to what Hugh was saying, though. Like, you look at people who do, most of the people who do, like, kettlebells, that's all they're doing. Or they're doing a lot of calisthenics. Even Pavel's talked about that before. He's doing, like, a minimalistic exercise with kettlebells and calisthenics. And the way he feels about it is that it just freezes motion, allows him to move, with full range of motion, freedom of movement, and without, risk of injuring himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As opposed to somebody who deadlifts 300 pounds in the regular and he goes over to, pick up a sock from the ground and throws his back out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Does that make sense? It doesn't seem like that would be the case, but.
Well, I think a lot of that, too, it's like when you're deadlifting heavy weights or lifting heavy weights, you pay attention to your mechanics.
Sure.
When you go to pick a sock up off the ground, you don't pay attention to mechanics.
Is it that, or is it what we talked about earlier? Like, when they're doing that deadlift, they think they need to lock their back out, they lock their facets to prevent spinal flexion, so they think, and then they go to use that spinal flexion when they pick up a sock,
And they don't have,
and they don't have it, right?
Yeah. Well, that could be it too. Yeah, but like I said, I think, when you're picking up a sock off the ground, do you think, oh, I got to brace myself? I got to use the right mechanics?
Should you have to?
Well, no, you shouldn't have to necessarily.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. But it's like when you're lifting something heavy, you really focus on doing it right. You know, where when you're picking up a sock, you don't. But you're right, you should. And we talked about this before we started this, but your spine is supposed to flex.
Right.
There needs to be a curve.
Right.
Your lordosis when you stand up in quote unquote good posture versus when you bend over to pick up a sock off the ground. You should have a reversal of that curve.
Right.
If you don't, that's a problem.
Right. Exactly
if you bend over. So you do need that.
Exactly.
So, but there needs to be control in that. And a lot of times we get away from that. I think we're too busy trying to, don't slouch, don't slouch. You need to slouch.
Yeah, exactly. You should be able to do both.
Exactly.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, so if you're training yourself to restrict your spine, to restrict that spinal flexion. Now, first of all, if you're bending that low, you're not going to prevent that spinal flexion. That spinal flexion is going to occur to some degree. What you're doing is you're just stressing other portions of your body, like you talked about.
Exactly.
And if you're training yourself that way, okay, what you're doing is you're locking your facets, you're locking your hips, you're getting more of that kyphosis from your thoracic spine, and then when you go to pick up that sock from the ground, that musculature, that myofascial tissue, ligaments, whatever, hasn't been expressed. So when you ask for it to be pliable or extensible and to initiate like a contraction, it's not used to doing that because you trained it not to do that. And then all of a sudden you hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's a good point.
And then we blame it on a disc. But the reality of it is, and I was talking about this in the residency, was if you look at like a 3D model of the spine, there's 3 different layers of the thoracolumbar fascia. There's the psoas, you have the quadratus, they all attach to your disc, to your vertebrae, to your facet joints, to the ligaments. It's never just one thing. So if all you're using is the passive elements of your spine because you have not trained yourself adequately to pick up a sock, that passive element will eventually fail.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you have to train both. And this is when you're training. And like I said, I love the kettlebells. I do a lot with kettlebells, but I also do barbell stuff and dumbbell stuff and body weight stuff. I try to get my workouts, I try to break them up into, different things where sometimes with body weight, working on conditioning versus sometimes just doing, barbell stuff for more power.
Right.
Because you want to build that strength. And then the kettlebell stuff is more explosion, and athleticism. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So when you combine them both and you hit from all angles as opposed to, I read this one blog some years ago, and I don't remember the guy, but he was hated kettlebells, and he said they're the worst thing in the world. And the only thing he said was that my grandmother could do a goblet squat. So because a goblet squat is a relatively easy exercise, kettlebells are terrible. And so I'm like,
okay,
really? Okay. Yeah, and that's fine. Anyone can do a goblet squat, but goblet squats are there more for, mobility training,
Mhm.
So before you do a heavy, barbell squat, or even a deadlift, a proper deadlift form, or a double kettlebell front squat where you can use heavy weights, now you can start loading weight up, you have to have the proper form. So let's get that form with the goblet squat, So someone that cannot squat properly, before I do squat workouts, I'll do goblet squats. I'll get down, I'll do 3 to 5 to loosen the hips up, drop down, pry the hips open, feel loose,
That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a technique. You're just loosening your body up,
Loosen your
so
body.
you can go through the range of motion with freedom, and not restrict yourself and hurt yourself.
Yeah, and for some people, the goblet squat might be enough.
Mhm.
Because you could still use, a heavy kettlebell or dumbbell, do a goblet squat, and that might be enough for someone that can't lift real heavy weights, and that's fine. But then once you get beyond that, like I said, you can go to the, barbell. And start loading real heavy weight up, or
the people who speak to that kind of stuff, that talk about how terrible something is, like, because you hear that with bands too.
Mhm.
Bands are awful and chains are awful. I really just don't. I think they're ignorant to what the purpose of those tools are.
Yep.
And if first of all, you don't need a bunch of tools, but if you know what that tool has to offer versus this tool, it does change your approach.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you. Have you experimented with the speed of movement? Like, are you working with like eccentrics? Are you doing slow concentrics? Do you do a lot of isometrics as well?
Like with patients, I might do so. I haven't really done. I have in the past done isometric work, slow work, fast work. Yeah, there's, you got to train for what you're doing. So, there was actually this is a story. My brother was going to PT school, and he called me because he had a question. Him and his CI, he was a student, were stumped on a kid who had a shoulder problem, and this kid was. I think he was 17, 18 years old. I think he was 18, but he had a scholarship to, I think, Clemson, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
But he had for pitching, for baseball.
Oh, really? Okay.
So he threw the ball like 100 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he would complain of shoulder problem when he pitched.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did all the typical tests, that we do, the resisted testing, no problem. The problem, look at this kid. He's a high-level athlete.
Mm-hmm.
He throws the ball
really fast,
100 miles an hour. I go, you can't reproduce the symptoms.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So what you might want to do is get a band and have him do a few very fast reps. Tie a band to the wall and just have him pull. Oh, there, now it's coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, watch his mechanics as he's going through the speed of his motion, because that's where he hurts himself. He's strong enough. He can go through the motion slow and control it. It's when he's throwing the ball 100 miles an hour, where he loses it.
Right.
And so he's probably impinging. Again, I was just over the phone, but I'm like, why don't you check high speed and check him there? Because
it almost sounds obvious.
Yeah, no, it is.
I would have stuck a baseball in his hand and said, here, throw it.
And watch his mechanics.
Yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of times we let the simple go. We try to complicate things.
Yes.
Life is a lot simpler.
Yes.
And
Daniel muscle tested him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, slow speed. This kid's a D1 athlete,
But it's common sense. It's common sense. It's about being simplistic. We talked about this before with society and stuff like that. By trying to do things better, we try to complicate things, and what that does is just messes things up.
Mm-hmm.
Simplicity is really probably the better form. And I tell my students and my residents, a big lesson I've learned is usually less is more.
Yes,
it really is.
Less is more most of the time, because we overcomplicate. We try to get things, make them harder than they need to be.
Yes. Why? Why do we do that?
Sometimes I think because we want to make us sound like we're smarter, like we know more, or whatever. That's my guess.
I think it's human nature to think more is better.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
Yeah.
And whatever it is, it's like doing the American swing. If I go higher, then it's better.
Right.
Not necessarily.
All the way must be better.
Yeah, not necessarily. It's like I said, I'll give you a heavier kettlebell and show you how to do it the right way, and I guarantee you, I'll make you work hard.
Yeah, you get more.
And you're not going to hurt yourself.
Right.
So I can't tell you, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else. I can't tell you how many times I've hurt myself in the gym, my own fault.
Yeah.
Trying to get, you know what, I'm on rep 7 and I want to get 10. Why is 10 the magic number? That's another issue that I have. But, I try to do that one extra rep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, something popped in my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't lift for 3 months because I'm injured. You know what I mean? And this is why is more better. So if I didn't do that one more rep, look at how many reps I lost in the recovery time. So, a lot of injuries because we try to do that one extra thing.
Well, you spoke to this before where you talked about if you end up hurting yourself and you're not frequently and consistently using your body, you haven't done your body any good.
Yeah.
Even though you try to do more. And I tell my patients, we've gone so far, the pendulum always swings to the extremes. Before it was like, oh, stay in bed, get some rest, don't move, do this, Now we've gone to the point where I've heard, people from CEU courses say, if they're in here for their shoulder, I want them to leave knowing like they can barely pick up their shoulder because they worked so hard. Mm. They've developed it. They've used the tissue that we're trying to recover. And I'm like, well, what are they going to be like the next day, or the day after, or the day after that? Are they going to be able to use it? And if they don't know how to use it, if they can't use it because it's too sore because you worked them out, then where's the frequent and consistent use? Now they may even be worse because now they're afraid to move because they don't want to get sore. They don't want to do any more therapy because they got sore, and they're not frequently expressing that tissue, which is what really heals the tissue or develops it, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you have to work away from the shoulder, for example.
Oh, sure.
Like I said, why did they hurt their shoulder? Find out.
Yeah.
Was it again? Is the thoracic spine not extending?
Right.
Is that why, going up overhead because they have terrible mobility and then they're not able to, extend through the thoracic spine? So maybe you need to work on that.
Yeah.
That's why we have a patient, one that we've been working with for months and months and months on his arm and his shoulder and his strength and reaching. He still can't reach. He's getting better, but finally it came to the point I'm like, the guy can barely get out of his chair. He almost falls over 3 times before we get from the lobby to the back. It's like, maybe we should start working on his balance. Start trying to get his balance better. Leave the shoulder alone for a while. See if we can't stabilize the rest of his body. Stabilize his hips and his trunk, his pelvis and his trunk. And maybe we'll see some flow of carry over into the shoulder. We did some balance treatments with him, and his shoulder does seem to be doing a little better. His reach is a little better.
Well, sometimes it's, again, and I'll take core and balance together. It's, if you don't have a good base to work from, your shoulder's never going to get better. So you have to have that core stability to stabilize so he can move the shoulder well. And if he doesn't have good balance, he doesn't have a good base. So yeah, definitely. There was a girl I worked with years ago. Now her thing was balance vestibular. That was her stuff. But she would always say, and she worked mostly with elderly, like really compromised patients. But she would say, look at what's going to kill this person. And that's what you should treat. And again, if their balance is bad and they're going to fall, I don't care about their shoulder because they're going to fall down, break a hip, break their shoulder, crack their head, get pneumonia, die, fix the thing that's going to kill them. And, so that was pretty extreme when she said that. That's her quote. But what's their biggest problem? And it's funny is you see a lot of these things, like I said, getting at the FMS and the SFMA and a lot of this other stuff, it comes down to core, comes down to hips. So when it comes down to balance.
When you say core, what do you speak to?
I'm talking about everything from the shoulders down to the knees. I mean, of course, your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, your abs, your back, around all your lats are all part of your core.
So how do you identify? I mean, how do you define it to somebody? Besides what you just said. Because you're not giving the traditional core.
Well, core, everyone thinks of abs,
right?
And it's not abs. It's your stability muscles. It's your foundation. It's what allows you to move. Like if you're going to build a house on a swamp or build your house on a granite slab. Well, I don't care how good the house is you built on a swamp, it's going to sink. You got to have that foundation, that base, the things that your extremities attach to have to be strong.
So you're talking about proximal stability for distal mobility.
Yes.
Now, I go back when I think of the definition of core from what I learned was transverse abdominis, diaphragm, I'm being specific to
Yeah, I
that.
know.
Multifidus and pelvic floor, right? Your inner core. But I've moved away from that. And the reason is because the literature just hasn't panned out on that. Trying to get them to activate and segmentally move through their multifidus doesn't show any weight.
Mm-hmm.
Developing transverse abdominis doesn't necessarily improve their functional ability, even though you may have caused some hypertrophy.
Yeah.
Okay, or decreased fatty deposition. But the point is, I'm more along the lines of that definition where it's everything. It's everything. It's not just the transverse abdominis per se. It's the coordination of all the tissues within that area to work in a fluid manner without restrictive motion.
Yeah, and
And
they
be efficient.
Yeah, I've never been big on the transverse abdominis isolation stuff ever, and I know PT schools have gotten, all they talk about is TA contraction, TA contraction.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, when you contract your TA in isolation, nobody ever does that.
No.
Nobody. Tell me one person that ever does anything functionally. Picking up a heavy box, picking up their kid,
Right.
carrying groceries. Oh wait, I got to contract my TA. It's like. And
No. It's not TA. It's TRA.
Oh, sorry.
Come on now, man. You gotta be new age here.
See, I'm old. I'm old school. I'm
No,
old and
transverse. It's not tibialis anterior.
whatever. So I tell you, I don't do it. So I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
use any of the terms. So I don't.
Well, yeah, and that shit about you got a grape on your belly, or it's a pelvic clock, or there's a jelly bean on your pelvis. Oh man, come on, give me a break. Just fucking move.
Exactly. You gotta move and you gotta move up. Sometimes it's good to understand. I'll always go over with people when I start core stuff. I will teach them glute squeezes and pelvic tilts in different positions. And all I'm looking for them to do is to feel how they move, how when they contract one muscle, when you do a glute squeeze, you should feel yourself going into a little bit of a posterior pelvic tilt.
Mm-hmm.
If your knees are straight, it's not going to move as easily. Your knees are bent. It's a little harder to squeeze the glutes because you're not at a mechanical advantage, but you'll feel more motion in the pelvis. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, when I squeeze my glutes, my back moves this way. Mm-hmm. That's all I want them to do is understand that. Like when you do one thing, there's a consequence to it,
Mm-hmm.
And you might, consequence isn't good or bad, it just is. So if you want to move into a posterior pelvic tilt, hey, if you squeeze your glutes, that's going to help you. You know what I mean? If you want to go anterior pelvic tilt, maybe don't squeeze your glutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's understanding your body, and so many of us don't understand how our body moves.
That's right.
We don't understand this.
Patient that says, "Well, how do I squeeze the glutes? Am I squeezing them? No, you did nothing."
Yeah,
I don't know how to do that.
And then they fart.
Well, we don't want that.
And they shit their pants. And you say, well, if you would have squeezed your glutes.
So we send to the other room for our pelvic health.
So, this
pelvic floor. All right.
But when you get someone like, it's the difference between doing, work on, machines versus doing barbell work versus dumbbell work. Doing the TRA contraction is kind of like working on the machines. You're isolating the muscle in and of itself, and you're not working everything around it. Barbell's a little better.
But you're also, with that TRA contraction or the machine work, you're restricting your motion for the thought of being safe.
Yes.
And in reality, that restricted motion is what harms you down the road, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it definitely could. Yeah. But like I said, as you get into more like, say, the other extreme of the dumbbell work, that allows full freedom of motion. And you have to stabilize. I mean, doing holding I like the kettlebell because, again, it's off balance versus a dumbbell, but doing an overhead carry, one hand carry, guess what? That's working your core. That's working everything.
GPS signal lost.
But if you work your
No, that's all right. I was wondering if you had a chick in your pocket. It's like, you devil.
Oh yeah.
She hot? No?
Yeah,
She sounded hot.
Sounds European.
I had the GPS to get here, and I just shut it off.
Do you use the Australian voice for Siri?
Whatever the hell. I don't have Siri again.
Oh, yes.
I got Samsung.
Okay, so is it an Australian voice that she gives you?
Whoever the hell that was. I think it was Australian.
Oh, is it?
Sounded a little
Well,
bit.
I mean,
Does your voice ever change, like depending on what part of town you go through?
No, not that I'm aware of.
My voice has changed. I'll be driving, and it'll give me one voice, and then all of a sudden I'll get a different voice. I'm like, who is that? What is this?
So you get like a Pakistani voice if you're going through a certain neighborhood?
Maybe.
Or an Irish?
Maybe.
They say, turn the fuck around.
I usually don't have the voices on.
It's alarming.
It's alarming?
Yeah.
They're like, stop. Where the fuck are you going? Turn around. And the Australian chick's like, please make a roundabout.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I could do the dialects, but there's no fucking way. And I don't sound like a chick. But, you know, I want the hot chick's voice. That's all I want.
There you
I want her to, like,
go.
but
Distract you.
before she tells me what to do, I want her to, like, say something sexy or sultry. You know?
That should be a thing.
It should be a
They
thing.
should. Maybe we could do that.
They're like, hey, I noticed you from across the car seat. I like the way those biceps look in that shirt.
Notice you driving down my street. You should make a turn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, we digress.
Talking about dumbbells.
Well,
and
I want to get to a
mobility.
point here. So, you know, we're sitting here, we're treating this patient. Patient is status post rotator cuff repair. We can talk about the core all day long. The fact of the matter is, the core is a whole part of your body. And if you really want to dissect it and get like local and whatnot, blah, blah, okay, fine. There's a core for the shoulder, core for the knee, core for if that's the way you want to go. We have this patient. This patient is complaining of shoulder pain over and over and over. Can't sleep. And it just occurred to me, you know, we're working the stabilizers of the shoulder, the rotator cuff. Looks pretty damn good, you know, but what's not looking good? Well, it's not the upper trapezius and the supraspinatus. Supraspinatus was strong in isolation, but in collaboration with the upper trapezius, it didn't look good at all. So what we did was we just did a lot of eccentric work and slow concentric work to the upper trapezius and the supraspinatus, and it turned that patient around. It was amazing. But in therapy, you know, the standard of care for an upper trap, you know, is usually it's hyperactive or, you know, it's tight. I hate those definitions because they don't mean anything. And so what do we got to do? Massage them and stretch them. Turn them off. Stop using your upper trap when you reach up, you know, into a cabinet. It's like, well, maybe that's all they got. You know, maybe they don't have the freedom of motion to utilize that upper trap in a responsible way. So, you know, from my point of view, I think that we tend to overcomplicate it and go back to the simplicity model that you're talking about. Hey, if your problem is carrying your child, you know, on your shoulder when you're at a park, maybe carry a kettlebell on your shoulder at a park. Start from there, you know? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, you got to just work the activity. I mean, that you want to do. It's you know, if you want to get better at running, you got to run.
You can't put ultrasound on them?
Yeah. So, but a friend of mine, I was talking to him about. He was training on a treadmill for a 10-mile race. This is like 100 years ago, but I told him you better get off the treadmill and start running because you're not working your posterior side. You know, you need to use the treadmills doing half the work for you. I hate treadmills. I'll get into a treadmill rant.
No, go.
So no, but I don't think he really believed me, but he read this article this later and he sent it to me. This was a long time ago, but this I think she was an MD somewhere. I can't remember.
Australian?
No, I think I don't remember where, but she said she was having trouble hiking with her friends. She'd go out hiking and couldn't keep up. And she'd have to rest and stop. They'd always have to wait for her. And she was like, well, I'm going to stop hiking and I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out and get better. And this is back in the days when the Stairmaster was the thing. Mm-hmm. You know, that was the big, you know, fad at that time. So she got in the Stairmaster and she started the Stairmaster. She couldn't do it. She had to, you know, she level 1, huff and puffing. She couldn't last 5 minutes. Well, she built up her endurance. She was at whatever, level 10 or whatever the top level is. She'd do it for an hour. Mm-hmm. And she's like, look at how great my endurance is. And she went back out hiking with her friends saying, I'm going to show them. And guess what?
Couldn't do it.
She couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They had to wait for her. She was out of breath. And the conclusion is to get better at hiking. Guess what you got to do? Hike.
Yeah.
Right? You got to get better. She spent all that time instead of going to the gym and on the Stairmaster. She went out hiking. She would have got better at hiking. But you got to train for your sport basically, or train for your activity. You know, you gotta, you know, the extra stuff is great, but if you want to get better at something, you need to work at that.
And that's specificity. And that goes back to what you talked about. It's not just specificity in training, but specificity in testing. If you're taking an athlete, a D1, you know, pitcher who throws 100 miles an hour and hurt their shoulder, and you're testing them isometrically, for external rotation and neutral, well, no wonder why you're not going to find a damn problem. You're not being specific to the kid's needs.
Exactly. If you have their arm down low, check an internal external rotation like we do. Oh, it doesn't hurt. Well, yeah, but it never hurts him down there.
Right.
It hurts him up here.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
It hurts him up here when he's throwing it.
When he's cranking on it.
Faster than I could ever throw. You know what I mean? There's a thing, you have to put them in there, in the situation. And sometimes we just don't think about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. I think we make it too complicated.
Yeah. And we're all guilty of it. And I'm sure I do the same thing too. But
so are you doing any kettlebell instruction?
I really learn the kettlebells for me, and I'll teach some of my patients.
That's very selfish of you to keep it to yourself.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll teach. I don't do it like I don't have I'll teach anybody. I'm going to teach.
Yeah,
Joe.
That's why I asked him today. It was like,
So,
I was going to go to him after, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why don't we bring him over and talk?
Yeah.
That'll be good.
I think we should have you do the American swing first. Let's see what you shouldn't do.
Well, guess what? My shoulder, my thoracic spine, I already feel is stiff and tight. It's not been as bad lately, but my low back has also been giving me trouble. I'm on bench press IR right now.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a perfect situation. You should do the American swing later. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna throw it out.
All right.
But I have trained people. Like if they contact me through the RKC site, and actually I'm not even sure. My RKC may have expired. I think it maybe expired a year ago. I think it was during COVID, and I never got it renewed. Which I don't know if I'm going to, because I don't like. I'm not a personal trainer, and I don't. That's not what I do for money. I did it so I could do the exercise correctly for myself. I have had over the years a few people contact me, and I'll do one-on-ones. I'm more teaching people technique as opposed to running them through an exercise program. That I want to make sure you do it right. Then I'll give you examples of what you could do exercise-wise, but you do your own, or you do whatever. I'll show you how to do it. Make sure you know how to do it.
Do you make your patients do get-ups, Turkish get-ups?
Sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Depends on the patient, I've had, firemen, police officers, and guess what? They have to be pretty high level.
Yeah.
Some guys that are higher level athletes, I'll show them get up, show them,
I think that's great.
Turkish get-ups, man, they're awesome. But oof.
Yeah, love-hate relationship with those.
Yeah, right. I looked at them like, oh.
I haven't learned a hand yet, but I mean, I don't know. It's
a great exercise, but some days you're just like, I don't want to get down on the floor.
Yeah.
I don't want to lift this thing, but it's an awesome. It's again functionally relevant. Especially if you're talking about a cop who's wrestling around something.
Yeah.
Very functionally relevant.
Yeah. It's whole body movement.
Yeah. Well, you probably use that a lot when you're rolling too, right? The Turkish get-up is probably all of it's probably extremely specific to your needs in jiu-jitsu.
Well, with that it is, because what I've kind of found with that, every time years ago I would take a lot of private lessons. I went to
was she Australian?
My class? No, she wasn't.
I'm just wondering.
What is with you and Australians today?
She doesn't have to be Australian. She could be New Zealand too, like a Kiwi.
But but it's like every time I had trouble with something, if I had a problem in class and I had my private lesson, I'd be, if I was having trouble with this, it all came back to hips. And I'm like, kettlebell swings, hips. It's all hips.
Wait a minute, man. Are you a pelvic, asymmetry kind of guy?
No.
Sacrum's out,
No.
pelvis is rotated?
No, absolutely not. No. It doesn't say it can't happen, but it's very, very rare, in my opinion.
I think it's rare, and I think that it's bullshit that we keep advocating for something that has very little evidence.
Yeah.
Or no evidence, actually. I don't think there is any evidence for it.
Yeah, I did a couple year-long courses with under Olaf Eviant when I was out in California, and met him. He's passed now, but great guy. Funny, but he's like the man, one of the guys that developed between him and Colin Bourne and stuff, and a lot of development with therapy. But he's always saying, thinking therapist. That's what I want, thinking therapist. And he didn't want to show you a lot of techniques. He wanted to teach you the biomechanics, understand how the body works, and then you can figure the techniques out yourself.
Right.
Really, most of them. But he wants you to think. I'm sure where I was going with that.
We were talking about pelvic health.
Oh, the pelvic. Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm just a therapist. I don't think that I just don't see the model where the pelvis is rotating. I don't understand why a PT has to stick their finger up someone's ass.
Well,
to, like mobilize them.
Well, I mean, I think for pelvic floor stuff, that's not my deal. I don't do that. But one of the things that they would say there too, with the pelvic, the mobility, you got me off track again.
I do that very well.
Yeah. So you're saying we're talking about the pelvic floor?
Well, we're talking about people who you're anteriorly rotating on the side.
Yeah. So he was talking about Canadians. A Canadian therapist, their big thing is SI joint, SI.
Okay.
And again, this is from Olaf, not me, but he's saying the Canadian therapists, if they see one true SI joint that's out of place a year, that's a lot.
Oh, really?
He says that's a lot.
Oh.
One true one. They try to find it all the time, and that's kind of their thing. And this is every kind of like the Norwegians versus the Australians approach with therapy, and the Canadian model and all this stuff. It's like Canadians supposedly, at least it used to, be big into SI, and they're like in reality maybe if they see one a year.
Yeah.
I can tell you, and I've been working as a therapist for about 27 years now. I can tell you, I think I definitely saw one in my entire career. Okay, and the only reason is I was testing for it. And I used to try to test a lot for it a long time ago.
We all do, because you learned that.
Yeah, you learned it in school. And I remember doing a spring test, and something cracked. And I tell you what, I almost crapped my pants because I thought I broke this lady. It was so loud. But she came in the first day for her eval in a wheelchair because she could not walk. Mm-hmm. She was in so much pain. And whatever it was cracked. And then I'm like, okay, let's see what's up. And she actually started to move a little better. Like I kind of wrapped it up because I thought something might have been bad. It's either going to be good or bad. Let me know.
You're like, I broke her ass.
Yeah, I think I don't know what the heck happened. But it was loud, almost like firecracker. Loud. Wow. And she walked in the next visit.
Get out.
Feeling awesome. And I remember the receptionist, when she came back, that lady that was in the wheelchair, she's walking now. I think that was my only true SI joint that I saw in 27 years.
Yeah.
Because a true SI will correct like that. Mm-hmm. Once you get it into place, you belt them, you let it heal, and that's it. SI joints, and when they're really out, they're not walking. These people cannot move.
And it's usually traumatic. It's usually a traumatic issue.
Yeah, exactly. It's usually a fall, or pregnant women sometimes during, when
I
everything
don't know how much I think
that's when it could happen because things are looser.
I think it's. I was listening to Greg Lehman and Adam Meekins. I believe it was them, and they were talking about how the whole core thing with transverse abdominis and pelvic floor. You would expect that certain populations would be more vulnerable to those core issues and therefore pelvic issues as well, right? So who would you look to study? Pregnant women. And what you tend to find is that about 6 months after birth, their backs they're no different than anybody else. They're not nearly as vulnerable. They're not vulnerable.
Oh yeah, once they're done. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's not, even the act of pregnancy doesn't create a vulnerability to their pelvis nor to their core. Their so-called core. So the argument that that's the tissue that fails and it can't recover, or somebody keeps rotating in and out, it's just a flawed way of thinking. And to be honest with you, we don't have any evidence, and the testing sucks.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, like Olaf used to say, if you do your SI tests and you have 100 SI tests that say it's an SI joint problem. Mm-hmm. And if you do one test on the L5S1 and you find that's painful, it's L5S1, it's not SI.
Yeah.
Because anytime you're testing SI, guess what? You're also moving.
Exactly.
It's L5S1. Exactly. And I had a student a while ago, and he went through, we had a low back patient. He's going through all these SI tests, like 10 of them. And I'm just letting him do what he does, because sometimes you got to learn. Mm-hmm. And so he finished, and he looked up at me, and he says, and I'm like, okay, well, what are you thinking? He said, I'm thinking SI. I'm like, okay, do me a favor. I go, check her L5S1 real quick for me. And he did. and then light goes on. And I said, do not test SI until you clear L4, L5, and L5 and S1. Because if you don't clear them first, everything you're doing on the SI can flare up. Your L5, S1, and your L4, L5. So you're wasting your time. If you cleared L4, L5, you cleared L5, S1, and you know they're not a problem. Then if you test SI, now you might be able to say it's an SI problem. But he just wasted 15 minutes doing all these tests because you didn't clear out the other thing first.
Well, he also could have used the CPR to save him time as well. Clinical prediction rule.
Well, yeah.
I haven't seen a positive one, but they have them for a reason to increase your diagnostic utility and increase the likelihood for that issue. But anyway, let's go back to jiu-jitsu. I'm tired of pelvics.
Yeah, we said we weren't going to talk about PT.
Yeah, that's right.
True,
Damn
too.
it.
That's what I said at the beginning. I don't want to talk.
Yeah. And
Jeez, why are we doing
roped
this?
them into it. But,
You did it, so we blame it on you?
well, no, I said, did I say we or you? I said you. You roped them into it. Hey,
Man,
you're the one that would get all technical with PT.
my fault.
I would say, what are you training for?
Yeah, I want to hear more about
what are the
jiu-jitsu.
kettlebells, the athleticism?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Jiu-jitsu, I've been training off and on for years. Just got back in a couple years ago, probably a year before COVID started. And kind of a sad situation when COVID started. Our instructor went back to Brazil, and he hasn't been able to get back in.
This is the Brazilian studio in Cape Coral that I've heard so much about. They're connected with the Gracies, or
No. This is under Damian Maya.
Okay.
And my instructor trains with him. Back in Brazil, he's got his black belt through him. So I was training down in Naples, actually. And long story short, I don't want to get into it, but he went back to Brazil, and now he can't get back in the country. He's working on it. It's just hard, and it's all COVID-related stuff. So we're actually still training. We're training on, WhatsApp, video, so we're doing live training. So I actually matted out a room in my house, all mats, and I have a couple guys that'll come over and we'll train. We're trying to get our instructor back, or help him get back and get a school started. But Mark Blafano is a trainer, another trainer that I work with, and again, that I train with, and we're thinking of opening up not so much a school, but more of a jiu-jitsu club, to start training. We're trying to find a space to rent out that we can, get people in there. We're looking at a couple of different venues right now where we can put some mats down and work out with whoever, is willing to come in. And it's kind of more, it won't be quite formal like a normal class would be. It's just more, hey, let's work with each other, and we're going to try to teach some stuff, through our instructor. So he's going to teach us what we can start teaching him. And, we're not looking to make any money off of it per se, but what we're looking for is to pay whatever it is for the rent.
Yeah.
We want to make enough to pay the rent. We have to buy mats. We have to pay for the mats. That we're like, okay,
you want to keep the lights on and roll.
Yeah, exactly. So, we'll get that done, and then anything else we make is going to go to get Ale back. That help. Now he's going to pay for the ticket back, but to help him get his school started. And hopefully, this will turn into a school and grow with him. So that's what we're kind of hoping.
That's pretty neat.
Where that's going to.
So you're having a great time.
Oh, loving it. Yeah.
And you had mentioned earlier you're talking about a championship.
Well, I'm trying to get back into competitions. I'm right now still a little bit overweight, not my quote unquote, my fighting weight. So I didn't have another probably 30 pounds to go to get down to that. But I've just been out of shape for so long. And, COVID did hit me on the weight side of it because, I was still working technically, but, people are bringing food. So I'm eating like 4 times a day, and I had friends that would come over and use my pool because they were stuck at home, and so I get home from work and after eating all the time, and then they're having beers, so I had a couple beers with them, and then they bring me food over as a thank you for using the pool. I'm like, Jesus,
that's awesome.
So it was great.
My
My buddy's wife would cook, you know, these meals and
Oh, yeah.
bring over stuff for me all the time. So I
Awesome.
just, oh my God. So, so I put on a few and
So
try to get them off.
how do you cut weight then?
I mostly work out. You know, I'm trying to eat a little better. That's what I say. I'm far from a nutritionist, but you know, I'm drinking these, I guess, my own little smoothie things that I make up, and you know, I'll usually put in, depends on the liquid, either you know, like a muscle milk thing or some, you know, meal replacement shakes and you know, yogurt.
So you usually work
protein
out
powder.
you work out to cut down the weight.
Yes.
You don't do like a vegan thing
Oh,
or
no. I don't do that.
cut back on the
Oh,
carb
no.
or salt or thing.
No. Well, I'm trying to cut down on the carbs a little bit, but you need your carbs for the workouts I do are pretty intense, so I need the carbs. So yeah, I'm not really cutting carbs out. Definitely not going vegan. I am trying to eat more vegetables because you know I'm the type of person that comes home from work and I'll eat a bag of chips for supper. You know what I mean, it's like because I'm just tired and I just don't feel like cooking anything, you know. But I've been prepping meals lately. That's what I've been trying to do. So it's like, okay, I don't have to cook it from scratch. I just, you know, chicken or steak or whatever, you know, and just those frozen bags of vegetables, you know, and just nuke them real quick.
Don't cook them in the plastic.
No?
Don't cook them in the plastic. Yeah.
The plastic steamers.
Yeah. The
Okay.
plastic in extreme conditions, like whether it's cold or hot, it'll leach into the food
Okay.
and it'll fuck up your hormones. You know, when you take in a certain amount of the plastics, the dioxins, dioxides, those are related to cancer, and then the phthalates, they reduce your sperm count. They cut back on your testosterone. They mess up with your hormone system. So, for God's sake, don't cook shit and eat shit from hot plastic, especially soft
Well,
plastic.
typically I'll either use the steam bag vegetables, so throw it in the microwave, steam it.
Yeah,
So that's
that's what I
plastic.
think.
I was about to get excited, like, I didn't do that last night. I took it out of the plastic bag and put it in a plastic bowl
It's a soft
and
plastic.
microwaved it.
Yeah.
Well, is it the soft plastic? So the plastic.
Well, but just plastic in
I
general.
mean,
The soft plastic, it leaches a
I
lot
can see
more
that.
readily.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just stay away, like, you know, the soft water bottles that are easy to crinkle. You keep them in your car, you drink them, you know, after
What about metal?
in the
I
car
mean,
for
if
a
you're
while.
cooking in metal, does it not?
Well,
not
yeah,
happen?
well, that's the whole point behind, like, the cast iron skillets,
Mhm.
is that the iron will leach, but the iron you can use you can absorb it and use it for your red blood cells and many other things. So, I mean,
Okay.
iron's iron, right? There's a ferrous and
What if you're cooking with a lead?
No. Well, you're not
Don't
cooking.
cook with
You're not cooking a lead, are you?
No, I
Well,
don't know.
I hope
I don't
not.
know what they put in that Teflon stuff.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
stop the plastic. Don't cook in
No,
the
that's it. There you go. I did.
The steak sounds good though.
I mean, steak. Right now, I get chicken that I
No,
cooked a
fuck
few chicken
chicken.
breasts. So I like all kinds.
Yeah, whatever.
Chicken,
Yeah.
turkey, but
You sound like you should go carnivore.
yeah, I'm pretty much carnivore.
I should-
That's what I do.
yeah, we should
But I'm
do
trying to
chicken.
add vegetables into my diet because I don't eat a lot of vegetables, and it's not because I don't like them necessarily. I just don't.
You need
Too
it.
lazy
That's
to
the
cook
question.
Yeah.
I
That's
buy
why I
vegetables, put them in my fridge, and then they rot, and I throw them away. It's like I should just buy them and just throw them in the trash because that's what ends up happening.
Why not buy them and put them in the freezer?
Well,
then
see,
just take
they
them
get
out.
just as much. Yeah,
And plastic. Yeah.
and plastic. Yeah.
Plastic.
Yeah, cold conditions,
Yeah.
extreme.
Yeah. Extreme
I mean,
temperatures.
Well, you can put them in a Pyrex glass and foil lid.
Sure. The question is, do you need the vegetables? Do you need them are they important for health?
I don't know. You tell me. I'm not a nutritionist.
You know, it's a really interesting debate right now. You know, they're talking about some vegetables at the most might be the most beneficial, not necessarily because of nutrients, but because of hormesis or hormesis. And you know what I mean by that?
No.
It's like the introduction of something that might be somewhat toxic or bad for you, and you build up a resistance to it.
Really?
So by building up that resistance, it's like fasting. By building up a resistance, you strengthen your immune system and you allow yourself to be a little bit tougher. Therefore, you can age a little bit better.
I try to stave off aging by eating like Twinkies because there's a lot of
Tricky, yeah.
there's a lot of preservatives and stuff. Lots of preservatives, right?
Right.
They bury it. Jeez, he
You
looks pretty
stockpile the
young.
Twinkies.
He eats a lot of Twinkies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You know
Nice.
what's interesting? I met a man yesterday, treated a man yesterday who has diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And he said the doctors have no idea why he is as good as he is, because this has been 8 or 9 years now. He's had this Alzheimer's and hasn't had any major effects until recently when he had a procedure done and they put him under anesthesia against his wishes or will. But as I'm talking to the guy, I said, well, what's your lifestyle? What do you do? And he said he gardened was in his revalid report. He started telling me about gardening, and he's growing almost all of his own vegetables, his own foods. And so I started to think, well, maybe this has something to do with his,
Could be,
with conservation of his brain. He does eat meats. He says he eats, his meats, fish, and it sounded almost Mediterranean diet, but thinking fish and some meats here and there. But he did go lower fats. He wasn't on too many of the fats, which also threw me for a loop. And then he was also type 2 diabetic, which also threw me for a loop because he doesn't seem to eat a lot of sugar. I'm like, oh boy, okay. Well, now I'm confused. Now I'm perplexed.
Well, I mean, that's a tough condition. I mean, there's so many different reasons that play there. I mean, you have sleep deprivation, nutrition, activity level, genetics. I mean, it's just so many different things. You can't really attribute it to just one thing, which is why we're all perplexed. Yeah. But anyway, so you're getting back into competition for jiu-jitsu. What belt are you?
Purple belt.
You're purple? And that's like just below black, right?
No, there's a brown and black.
Brown black. So you're getting close.
It's the first advanced belt, they call it, So there's, white, blue, purple, brown, black. So
I think this is the only sport where black is above blue, white. Making a racial reference here.
Yeah,
Blacks are superior to the whites. I'm just saying.
But yeah, no. So it's like I said, I do it more for fun or things like that, and it's I used to compete years ago, and it was fun. I just moving. I would move different places. A few injuries, getting older, so I just got out of training, and then when a friend of mine got me back into it, he kind of, oh, come on down, just try this school out, just try this school. So I'm like, oh God. And I loved it. And that's my thing. It's like I don't, it's not like an effort for me to go because I just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Again, I remember when I first started, I started out in Hawaii. Shiruto was my original instructor, and he's the one that taught BJ Penn, who people know
that guy was
but he was BJ Penn's instructor.
He's a fucking beast.
Yeah, but that's who I didn't know who these guys were. And the guy that I worked with said, oh, you should come down to this thing. We do this wrestling thing. And I'm like, no, that's all right.
You're like, wrestling with a bunch of dudes.
Yeah. So I told them, it's like, oh, I don't have any shorts. I'll go next week, and it was like a no-gi thing. And so I brought shorts, but I was like, I'm not going to say anything to him. Hopefully he'll forget, And he didn't forget. I'm like, crap. So I went and got my ass kicked. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, I was strong at the time. I was, younger, and I worked out like in the gym, so I was not weak. And these people probably, 75 pounds lighter than me were kicking the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I mean, and I need to learn this. I mean, I was having a blast, but I was getting beat,
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's just something I just fell in love with. So it's just something I really enjoy. It's a chess match rather than just, kind of beating people up per se. It's okay, there's always an answer.
Right.
So if somebody does there's always a way out. Can you figure the way out, or how do you figure out how to do it? And sometimes, like I said, it's simple. It's not as hard as you think.
Right.
And you got to know your game, and I think this is as you get up through the belt levels. One of the things they say is you get up, for example, the purple belt level, you start to develop your game, and white, you're trying to survive. Just like, survive and learn defense,
okay.
And then as you get up to blue, you're learning kind of techniques, and you're just learning everything. And then as you get into like purple, you're getting, okay, now this is going to be my game. These techniques work for me and these don't, one of the guys I trained with would say, you got to know when to be the bear and when to be the rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
Mm-hmm.
if you're a bigger guy and you can win against a smaller guy, you shouldn't try to outrace him because he's going to be faster than you.
Right.
You know, vice versa. If you're the smaller guy going against a bigger guy, don't try to overpower because he's stronger than you.
Yeah.
You know, but you try to force them into your game.
Yeah.
You know, and then again, you kind of, like I said, there's a chess match. There's always a way out. There's always a way out.
So what's your favorite move? Do you have one? Do you have one that's your favorite?
Well, you know, again, my types of things is I like chokes and kind of shoulder locks are kind of the ones that I kind of go to. Those are my go-to. I like top. I don't like mount. I like side control. I like on the bottom. I'd rather be in half guard than full guard. I'd rather have someone in my half guard than my full guard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
you don't like mounting.
Yeah.
As I'll be
I
back
feel like
in just a second. Here, all this coffee I had today. It's ready.
No.
Well, like the mount position is more of a, you know, suppose it's more dominant position.
It's supposed to be,
but
right?
I would rather not be a mount. I'd rather be an S mount than top mount. You know,
Why?
Just I just feel I have better control.
Better control.
Just where you know, just maybe it's like leg length versus like, you know, thickness and strength, and just I just feel better. I'd rather be in top side control rather than top mount. If a mount, I feel better to be in what's like an S mount versus a you know, just a strength.
Well, it kind of makes sense if you're a shoulder guy, a choke kind of guy. You kind of want to be in a position that you can just rapidly exploit the shoulder or the neck.
Exactly. Yeah, and even that, you know, and it's transitions. A lot of the key to it is transitions. You know, it's like whoever wins the transition battle will typically gets the better, more advantageous position. You'll get a scrambles a lot. So
that's the mastery, though, is making those transitions, knowing what you're going to do during. It's a fluid process, but trying to figure out what position am I in? Where's my next technique? Where am I going to go? Or, you know what I mean? It's a really intriguing to see the gears grind when you're watching Jiu-Jitsu, you know?
And as you get better, you know, as you progress through the ranking systems, basically, is you recognize quicker. And that lets you take advantage of the transitions.
Yeah.
So the quicker you recognize something, and also when to bail, you know, sometimes, you know, if you're getting swept, some people just don't want to let go.
Sure.
And they hang on. It's like, if you let go, you could have caused a scramble instead of now being on the bottom.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes you got to know when to bail in a technique because it's just not working. Or it's like, hey, they've got it. It's over.
Mm-hmm.
So just let it go and try to be in a better position. You know, when this is all said and done, I'm going over. I'm getting swept. I'm getting taken down. Well, I'm going. So guess what? I'm going to try to be in the best possible position I can instead of being flat on your back, be on your side, be in a defensive position rather than having that situation and be like, oh, now I'm really screwed, you know? So, but it's just winning those transition battles. And like I said, I just love their chess match and trying to figure out.
And it makes sense too, because you're talking about the mobility and the dexterity of your hips and your legs. You gotta have a ton of that if you're gonna roll.
Yeah.
BJ Penn, the guy was flexible.
Well, he was strong and flexible. Yeah, he was.
Let me ask you this: do you think he would have been even more dominant as a UFC fighter had he actually put in more time for it? Because the knock on him is that he didn't train.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't have the attrition.
Yeah, I mean, from what I know of him, and I don't know him that well, but
don't call him out.
No, well, I wouldn't call him out, but he did not like doing he loved fighting. He loved doing. He was a fighter. He would go and have a lot of our fights and stuff. But you know, you hear about that stuff in the news. I mean, if you pay any attention to the MMA world, you've heard stories of him getting arrested and going to parties and stuff and causing trouble. But his technique was awesome. He loved training jiu-jitsu, but he didn't do a lot of like the weight cutting and the strength training and that type of stuff.
Or endurance training.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was so fluid.
Oh, he was unbelievable.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
He was awesome. It's just he didn't put the other work in on the side stuff from my understanding. And this is what you kind of see in most of his MMA fights. It's like, and he was so good, he went on technique a lot, but he would, you know, he just didn't have
Well, he had a natural ability. That's the thing.
He had great balance and flexibility, and to get him down, it's unbelievable how he could balance on one leg if somebody's trying to take him down. And
use the other leg to, like, you know, lock in a triangle or lock in a. It's amazing how the guy has so much dexterity.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't know him. I never watched his training. You know, I mean, I have met him, but I don't know much. I can't really say too much to that. It's just what I have heard is that he didn't put that extra stuff in. I mean, he trained the jujitsu a lot. He trained the technique. He was unbelievable with that. It's just that, like I said, he didn't. If he trained more strength, cardio, got proper weight cuts and stuff like that, I think he could have done something.
I think his biggest issue was cardio. I think if he had a lot more endurance, he probably could have lasted longer and tore people up. And I mean, the fights against Matt Hughes, and that's the other thing. You know, you're going against a wrestler and jiu-jitsu fight. I mean, I love those fights.
Yeah.
Because you talk about a chess match with two different techniques, and it's so interesting. And I think they're extremely related, closely related. And if you're a jiu-jitsu fighter, you have an idea about wrestling. But the question is, are you exposed to that quite often? And same thing for wrestling, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I like that kind of chess match more so than I do the striking anymore.
Well, the striking too it's got its own. If you know what you do, some people swing wildly. Some people, you know, cut, you know, angles and, you know, throw better strikes. You can see it. You know, people that have the skill. But, you know, with the wrestler versus jiu-jitsu guy, it's, you know, what they typically say is the jiu-jitsu guy is more technical. The wrestler is tougher.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's again getting in positions. Wrestlers do not like being on their back.
No.
So they want
to be in a full mount.
Yeah, exactly. They want to be on top. Jiu-jitsu guys, a lot of them like to be on their back.
They're like
full guard. So it's like sometimes it's like if you get the wrestler on his back, he's like a fish out of water, and that's kind of thing. But it's the toughness a lot of times, and the takedowns. The
wrestlers are more. They're dependent on their strength and their power too. Mm-hmm. Whereas the jiu-jitsu is like a very fluid, flexible bar, and they'll just, you know, they'll go back. And it's really interesting. Like, there is strength involved in jiu-jitsu, but they tend to be quick in those transitions, and the wrestler is just like trying to pin them and hold them and keep them from wiggling around and squirming and getting in position. You know,
it's definitely like a, you know, like I said, that toughness versus the skill. Not saying wrestlers are not skilled, because they are, but it's just like
it's a different
jiu-jitsu
skill.
Depends on the skill, depends on that. Where the wrestlers, I mean, I had a brother that was 2-time state champ. Could have been 3-time, but he hurt his back his sophomore year. He couldn't during the states. He didn't do well. I mean, just because he couldn't stand up. I mean, he was in so much pain. But you know, he was just one of these. He never had a lot of skill. We joke around about it. He just kind of goes in there like a gorilla, and he just would take people down. He'd shoot. That's it. And I ran into a guy who coached. This was up in Massachusetts, and I was actually training for a tournament. Our coach brought us to another school, and again, this is over in Massachusetts, and we would train with these guys. And happened one of the guys at the other school was a wrestling coach, you know, for high school. And I'm like, oh. And he said, my brother wrestles, so you might know him. Now, my brother at the time was ranked number 1 in the state, you know, so I didn't know if they crisscrossed, so I wasn't sure. And so he's, oh, what's your brother's name? And when I told him, he like threw his head back. He's like, oh God, well, my attitude first is don't say shit about my brother, you know? So, and I'm like, what's that supposed to mean? He goes, no, your brother, he's good. He goes, I had a kid, you know, that year who they thought had a chance at states, but he wrestled, you know, against my brother. And he goes, your brother, he doesn't wrestle like everybody else. You know, it's like he says, normally people will shoot 2, maybe 3 times, and then they back up and they reset. He goes, your brother shoots like 20 times. He won't stop shooting. He just and he will pick you up and slam you on the ground. And if you get up, he'll do it again. And he's like, after, you know, they started, you know, they got to a little break in the match, out of bounds, and he said, my kid looked over to me, he said, what do I do? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know anyone that does this. He's like, he was just like, and he just attacks. He doesn't slow down. When he was a freshman, he wrestled against a kid that was, I don't know if he was state champ or whatever, but he went against kids. They were butting heads because they were shooting. My brother didn't know how to do anything. I mean, that's just what he did. He just shot. Like so every time the other kid went to shoot, my brother was shooting too, and you know. And so he ended up beating this kid in like supposedly a really exciting match. And the kid that was varsity, my brother wasn't varsity that year. They from the other school, they both had the same kind of skill set, and they knew he was going to lose, the varsity kid. So the coach said, let's put Paul in there and just see what he does. We know our guy can't beat this guy because they both have the same strengths, same weaknesses, and we know this guy's better. He just is. So I throw Paul in there to see what happens.
Throw the freshman in there.
Yeah, and Paul beat him. I mean, because the kid didn't know what to do with him. He's like, who the hell is this kid, and what are you doing?
So
Nobody does this.
From what you've learned in jiu-jitsu, what would you do with somebody that's aggressive like that? You'd use it against him, right?
I would try, yeah. Well, see, if he came in real hard, depends. If he's double leg, I'd try to sprawl. And again, it's a different tactic because I'm not looking for a pin. I'm looking for a choke.
Are you sprawling and like wrapping yourself around the back?
Yeah, I try to sprawl and get his back, and is what I would try to do there. But again, it depends. Again, that's kind of my thought process. But if
you're not gonna go guillotine on somebody like that.
You might. If he gets in really deep, I might. Sometimes if he gets in too deep, you take his momentum. If he's really out of control, you can, again, like I said, you know when to bail. It's like, I know I'm going over.
Yeah.
I'm going down. I've done this to people too, usually at lower levels. So as you get to higher levels, probably doesn't happen. You're in more control. But people that kind of coming out of control, it's like, okay, I'm going. So just fall back with them, and you add to their momentum. And then next thing you know, you flip them over, and you're on top. Yeah. They initiate the takedown, but you rolled when you were done, and now I have the top position. But so who gets a takedown there? I don't know, but I don't know. I'm just in a better position. I don't care. So it's like you said, you got to know when to bail on stuff. So, but it was funny. Some funny stories with him. His wrestling. His coach was like, "Oh yeah, your brother's just like a bull in a china shop." It's just,
that's awesome.
And he was a lightweight kid too, so he was lighter weights. So most of the kids were more.
So he probably learned to be that way because he's has to go up against these bigger kids, right?
No, because it's weight classes, so they were all in the same weight class. But I mean, it's. I think most of the kids are not used to his style in that weight class. So it was, but he was a really good wrestler. It's fun to watch him.
Well, is there anything else you're doing? Anything else you're up to?
Oh, Jesus Christ! Not really much work.
Jiu-jitsu,
working out. Yeah, just really working out. Trying to eat a little better. Drink beer. Drink. Yeah, that's when that's one of my problems. That stops me from losing some. When my girlfriend yells at me a lot. Well, stop drinking beer. Well, don't throw the
nutritionally speaking, it might be good for you.
Well, it's hops, barley. It's kind of like vegetables, right?
Well, what's interesting is first off, do you know why people they don't like bitter tasting foods?
Why?
Because most poisons, especially plant-based poisons, are bitter. So you evolved to develop this bitter sensation to warn you if something is harmful.
Huh.
At the same time, when humans started to like domesticate animals and settle down and like their own like little civilizations or villages, they, for the most part, they were nomadic, right? They would travel and they would get fresh water and whatnot in places. You always want moving water. You don't want stagnated water. Stagnated water comes with disease. So what they learned when they started like developing agriculture is that things ferment, and then of course it creates alcohol, right? And alcohol, and back then it wasn't so strong as it is today. It's like a little less. As far as strength is concerned, if you mix alcohol and water together, it kills everything in the water. So you have safe drinking supply. So you can then have water that stagnates a little bit if it's mixed with a little bit of alcohol. Thus, beer.
There we go.
Okay. It's been with us for a long time. The difference now is that beer is a lot stronger than it was 100 years ago or so.
So next time you come over asking for coffee, and I give you the coffee that I made with the sink water, and you spit it out, I will just give you a little bit of water with rubbing alcohol, or maybe put the rubbing alcohol in the coffee.
That I would rather have that.
Okay.
This water is shit, man. You're from Massachusetts,
I was never a water fan in Massachusetts.
No, the water down here, I mean, it's literally mixed with shit.
Really?
Yeah, well, yeah, because the water, the aquifers, there is no subterranean aquifer. It's on top of the land, so it's a mix of fertilizer and shit and
Well, that's all that
medication.
shit from the close hatchet too.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
That's gonna start getting better.
Oh man, I'm so sick and tired of hearing about the Okeechobee and the backflow with the sugar companies and the destruction of the Everglades and and then of course the destruction of our beaches and of our grass beds and the loss of fish and the algae blooms and it's like fuck. Like why can't Congress do anything to stop the sugar companies from destroying the? Why not? It just pisses you off.
It's not that they can't; they won't.
They won't.
There's a couple of scientists came down. I don't know, a couple of years ago, and I remember they did a little speech about it. And it's been done before. Lake Champlain up in Vermont had a similar problem, and they cleaned it, and it's now one of the cleaner lakes.
Yeah.
They know how to do it. The blueprint's there. It's right there. You just have to do it. You have to want to do it. And you have to do it. They're not doing it for all their scumbag reasons. That
it's corporate control though, because it's not just here. The Gulf is suffering because of what's happening in Mississippi and Alabama with the death of the marsh beds and the flood of the red algae and the pollutants from corporations. And we live in a corporate socialized America. We don't even live in a. We don't want to go into politics too much because I know some people don't feel comfortable with that. But I'm sick of this shit, and I'm thinking about going to Australia. There's a lot of Australian chicks over there.
There you go. You like the Australian chicks?
Well, I don't know.
You're gonna take
to be honest with you, they probably won't like me. Over there, they probably like that guy looks like Mark Wahlberg. I'll take that. Or they'll take the your Massachusetts, your New Englander style dialect or accent.
Yeah.
Hey, are you still a Patriot fan?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I've actually got out of sports a lot. I haven't been watching a lot of sports lately. It's hard.
Because of the kneeling or some shit? Or
not just the kneeling's part of it, but all the politicizing of everything. It's like, that's another whole discussion, all the bullshit that comes out. I mean, just an example, LeBron James with his little freaking tweet he just came out with, whatever the hell he did. After that, he saved a life. The police officer. You didn't hear LeBron's?
No, I didn't see that.
A girl got killed, 16-year-old.
Is that the one with the knife?
Yes.
The knife, yeah. Okay.
She was in the process of going to. She was yelling that she was going to stab her to death.
Yeah.
And he told her to stop. What do you do? It's a fraction of a second. If he waited a second, the other girl's getting stabbed. She wasn't listening. There was a lot of bullshit going on. And LeBron does a little "you're next," accountability tweet with the hourglass.
Oh, wow.
So basically it's like bullshit.
Yeah,
bullshit. He did the right thing in that.
Right.
I'm not saying they do it right every time, but every time it's proven that the cop did the right thing. If it doesn't fit the narrative, they twist it. They twist it. No,
that's the problem, is that they're twisting shit. But this is what I don't understand. It's like watching sports, and you watch an instant replay and you slow it down. Okay, it looks clear there, but it took a fraction of a second for that play to occur. So of course a ref could miss something, right? We kind of ignore that a bit. It's the same thing here. A lot of these instances, like the woman who thought she pulled out a taser, but she pulled out her gun and shot the kid. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt that she made a mistake, an occupational mistake that does carry a significant punishment. However, I don't think she intentionally tried to kill the kid. It's
a consequence more than a punishment.
Right. The thing happened in less than 5 seconds.
Right.
You try to make a fucking crucial decision like that within 5 seconds, mistakes happen.
Right.
Now, that being said,
but you're playing with fire if you put yourself in that situation.
Well, I don't understand why the kid's got to break away and jump in the car and run off. I don't understand.
Well, you know why? Because he had warrants out for his arrest for a violent criminal act.
Exactly.
And that's why he ran. Now, should she have shot him? Now, again, I've held a handgun, but I've never held a taser, so I don't know what's the difference. I mean, can you not tell when you pick it up that this is my gun versus my taser?
But you're talking about a 5-second reaction.
Yeah, no, I know. It's probably even less than that, but I know. I'm just saying but in that situation, though, I will say this: as a police officer, you need to be trained enough to know when I grab this. Shit, that's my taser. But again, pick up. whatever they're handling now, 9mm, I think is what does that feel like versus a taser? You can't tell the difference when you grab it.
But you're asking for them to automatically recognize that within the 5 seconds.
You should, no, but that's their
I
job.
agree.
That's their job.
I'm not disagreeing with you, and that's why they should actually get more training than actually being on the job. They should have more training.
She obviously wasn't qualified for her job.
And you're talking about 25, 26 years, right, of experience. But the bottom line is that the parents are calling for accountability. Fine.
Yeah,
they have to show accountability too. He broke away and jumped in that car. He was going to run off.
And that's the thing. The police do have to be accountable. I agree. And she was wrong, and that she needs to be punished for it. Whether it was more negligence versus, again, a true act of hatred or whatever, racism. But here's the thing, and I saw this thing on Facebook the other day. It's like if the police get shot because it's their job description allows them to get shot, killed. Well, criminals need to be accountable too. That when you do criminal acts or shoot at a police officer or somebody else, you will also get shot. The problem is they want the accountability from the police, but they don't want the accountability from the criminal. You know what I mean? And that's the problem. It's like, if you are not committing a crime, you're not going to get shot 99.9% of the time. It's
all of a fucked up situation to begin with. I mean, the fact of the matter is that over-policing exists. There is corruption. The fact of the matter is that people that go to jail and spend a large majority of their life, or just a little bit of time in their life because of a crime that they didn't commit, and then all of a sudden they find out that, the person was innocent all along, and they leave without even an apology. They just leave.
Well, who's that kid?
I mean, they should also, at that point, the state should also be accountable towards that prosecution, and therefore give the guy some back pay, at least, so he can make a living or something.
Exactly. That's bullshit. Like, there was a guy that was arrested for rape. This is a long time ago, and it was just a few years ago he got out. But he was, I think he had a scholarship to USC for football.
I think I heard about this.
He had sex with this girl. I don't know, someone found out, she was embarrassed, didn't want to admit that she was a white girl with a black guy. She said he raped him. Well, no freaking justice. He went to prison for it for, I don't know, for like
it was like 10 years,
something like that. Wow. And then the only reason he got out is because she was bragging on Facebook, social media, to her friends how she got away with this. And somebody screenshotted it and brought it to the police. Wow. And that's how he got out.
And he gets out.
Guy lost it.
But she should go in.
She should go in. She should go in, and she should have to pay repercussions. I mean, this guy now, who's to say he would have made the pros? Who knows? But he had a scholarship to USC, which means he's a pretty damn good football player. Right? He had a chance to make the pros. At least get a free education. Yeah. At least, right? Because of her, he lost all of that. Yeah. And he did get on, I think, the Falcons practice squad. I'm not sure whatever happened to him in the long run, but I'm glad he's out. But that's bullshit. Right. And what are the repercussions for her? Right. Nothing.
Now you tell me how that's any different than murder.
Exactly.
It's the same fucking thing. She should go in for murder, in my opinion.
Basically.
And she should lose her life. And you're right. Her possessions should become his in a way to pay restitution. Because you don't know what kind of future this kid could have had.
Yeah, you don't know, and you can just guess. Okay, this is a kid that went in with these kind of expectations. This is the money he could have made, in the NFL,
or he could have had a degree,
and
he did a career.
Yep,
and that didn't work out,
and now he's out, and no repercussions for him.
Yeah,
nothing.
Did they at least take him off the sex offender list?
I'm sure they did.
I would hope so. But I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, because the whole system system's fucked.
No, it is bullshit.
And you almost have to blow it up. It's like a football, like any sporting team. You almost have to blow it up and start all over again. It's so fucked. You don't even know if you can refurbish it. You don't even know.
Well, it's so deep. This is the thing. It's just so many, tendrils twisted, and you scratch my back, I scratch yours, and you owe me this, and I owe you that. Blah, blah, blah. It's so twisted right now. I don't think there's a way out of it.
And certainly the most fucked up part of it is that us as American citizens, we see it, but the majority of us don't say anything.
Yeah.
We don't do anything about it. We just bitch about it, or we just We're just apathetic.
Well, yeah, because we think, well, it's not affecting me.
Exactly.
Well, what's that saying? It's like, when they took this one, I didn't say anything, and then they took this one, and when they came for me, there was nobody left to say anything.
That's
You know what I mean? And this is the same type of thing. It's you letting it go, and all this bullshit's happening, and we're watching it happen around us. And everyone's like, well, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me. Well, it's going to affect you.
Yeah.
Like we were just talking earlier today before we got on about the dollar. Our economy's going to shit.
Yeah.
We're printing money up so fast. And just to keep paying things, it's like, well, now the dollar's worth less and less. And, there's listened to a talk show the other day, and they say, well, they're doing it on purpose because they know what they're doing. They're making the dollar worth less, so all the money they owe, they don't really have to pay back as much because it's not worth anything.
And what people don't realize, or what they don't understand, is that these people, the people that are making the money from this, that are actually living a better life, that are capitalizing on all of these issues, the pandemic, the bailouts, they're the ones that are telling the poor people, white and black and brown and yellow and all of us, that there's differences, that there's a division there. There's really no division. It's a battle on poor people. Meanwhile, they're stealing from the poor people to line their pockets.
Yep.
And the poor people are too busy trying to get home, take care of their kids, feed their kids, do their job, not to see that they're losing their mind, they're getting robbed, but also they're falling into this trap of division that these wealthy motherfuckers are playing on us.
Keep us divided so they can, keep it in power, and that's what they're doing.
That's right. It's a distraction.
Yep.
It's a distraction.
Yep.
And if we don't wake up and start paying attention and unite and fight back, it's going to happen until it collapses.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
It is, yeah. And then this thing, it's like, all these, the politicians and the athletes and actors and actresses are all getting on the TV. Oh, we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. No, we're not in the same boat.
Right.
We're not in the same goddamn boat. You're in a yacht, and I'm in a fucking rowboat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or one paddle.
Yeah.
Well, actually, my boat's not that bad. I got a nice house. I've got a pool. I've got.
No, but you're right. They're not on a super yacht though.
But they're in a super yacht. I'm in a decent one. But there are some people that are not. That are living.
I've got 9 kayaks.
They're on a
So that's almost worth it.
Some people are on a life preserve.
Yeah.
They're
No, exactly.
on a life
Some
raft.
people are
That's
floating. Yeah. Some people are floating in a little rubber
And
raft.
they're getting the scraps that are being dumped off the edge.
Oh, we're in the same boat. No, we're not in the same boat.
No.
Don't do that bullshit.
No.
But this is the thing, and these idiots buy into it. Oh yeah, they're the same. No, they're not the same. They're living in a freaking mansion.
That's right.
They have chefs cooking these huge meals for them. If they want to, who's all this stuff like, who is it, Newsom from California? Oh, no one's allowed out of California on a lockdown. And he goes out to dinner with his family.
Yeah.
Yeah, how does that freaking
And then lies about it.
And then lies about it.
Yeah.
And Pelosi goes and gets her haircut.
Yeah. Oh man, Pelosi needs to get out of office. She's worth so much money. This bullshit that they can invest in Wall Street while acting in Congress and participating in insider trading is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile Martha Stewart goes to jail.
Exactly.
Martha fucking Stewart. Teaches me how to make a frittata goes to jail, and Pelosi, who is spending all this money, I just can't take it anymore. And Mitch McConnell,
Martha Stewart didn't, hang herself Epstein style.
oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she's an elitist too.
Yeah. She's clean.
yeah. Well, she hangs out with Snoop Dogg, so I'm okay.
But part of her stuff too. I'm sure she didn't go to a very
No.
hardcore prison. She went to a resort. I mean, it's like.
Well, how do you think her and Snoop Dogg hooked up? There's got to be a weed connection in there somewhere.
For sure.
And I think that maybe she got connected to a weed guy, a pot dealer in jail, and that's how she became friends with Snoop Dogg.
I mean, she's probably got
Does that make
connections all
sense?
over.
Yeah, well,
Hopefully
anyway,
weed just runs through the jail.
weed needs to be legal, period, across the country, in my opinion. Weed and prostitution, that's what I'm going for. Australian prostitution.
That's
There you go.
All right, man. I guess do we have anything else? We've done
That's
quite a
very
bit.
good. We talked actually longer than I thought. And when you
Yeah,
said talk
no,
about
I-
me, it's like this will be about 5 minutes.
Wait, he's got a question. He definitely wants to know another thing.
So I want to know who we're betting on tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Masvidal and Usman.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Masvidal.
I tell you what, I just think it's gonna be a great fight. Usman's a beast. He's awesome. I
You
mean,
think it's gonna be better than the last one?
I think it's gonna be a better fight than the last one.
I agree.
I think Masvidal's ready. I think
He took the fight, like you said, he'd done 6 days last time. He didn't get to train for it. And Usman claims that he only took it because so he could have an excuse. I doubt it. I doubt that fight
Who's
is
the
ever
underdog?
going to be an excuse. He wants to fight.
Masvidal's the underdog, right? I'm going for the underdog.
No,
I'm going for the guy that's.
I still think Usman's going to beat him.
Yeah,
I just think Usman's that good.
They're both great
very
fighters,
surprised.
so.
I thought Barnes was going to beat Usman, and Usman knocked him out.
Yeah,
I was like, wow.
I really would say I think Usman's going to win, but I think I would not be surprised if Masvidal wins either.
I'm counting on the grit.
What I would say is I would be shocked if this is like a bad fight.
Yeah,
You know, someone gets knocked out in a second. I think that these two guys I don't think they like each other.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be an awesome
They don't
fight.
like each other. Usman just talks so much shit too, though.
Yeah, but they're both unbelievable. Jesus Christ.
Well, hold on. We gotta go back to my original question.
What's that?
Are you still a fan of the Patriots?
Yeah, I mean,
Or did you come to Tampa Bay, baby?
Oh no.
You're not coming to Brady's there. We got a championship.
No. You guys, we gave you one.
No, he gave us one. You guys did not commit to Tom, so he went somewhere where we committed.
You're right. No, I agree.
I think it's dumb. I think why don't you give your 6-time championship?
Yeah, let him ride out on the.
Yeah, but you know,
charity.
Here's one thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not crying sour grapes. I wanted Tom to stay. I did not want him to leave. I don't hate Tampa. Got nothing against Tampa, one way or the other. But what I think it almost cements his legacy, because a lot of times, like you look at a lot of these great quarterbacks, like you know Montana and Favre and all these things, and they did all this stuff, and then when they left their team, they did nothing. Like they weren't.
Well, Montana did well, didn't he?
He never won a Super Bowl.
No.
I mean,
Did he go to the Super Bowl?
No, I don't think. Not with the Chiefs.
Okay.
No,
He might have made the playoffs like 1 year or something, but like they never did anything special. Brady takes a Tampa team that when was the last time they were in the playoffs?
Oh gosh, yeah, 2002.
And win the Super Bowl.
Right.
You know what I mean? And with no off season.
But Tampa has had talent for the last 10 years. We just haven't had somebody smart enough and a quarterback to make.
This is my
30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions.
Well,
I've
said it all the time. I think that Belichick benefited more from Brady as a quarterback than Brady benefited from his system. I say that because of this. The first 3 Super Bowls they won, they had a great defense. The last 3 that they won with him, their defense was so-so. I mean, the one against the Seahawks, that could have been a touchdown if they run the beast. Right?
Could have been.
I mean,
last
Super Bowl they won, their defense was pretty good. Was that
not too bad?
Touchdowns
right? But their defense wasn't. The defense wasn't a
great.
lockdown defense like it was, and so and Belichick's a defensive guy. So I think Brady grew into that role and really learned the little facts of being a quarterback. And he was friends with Peyton Manning, so you know those guys are chatting up and they're talking about detail. So he brings that to Tampa, and I think you're right. It cements his legacy. I think Belichick's still a good coach, but I think that Brady was underappreciated, undervalued.
Yeah, I think Belichick's very hard-headed is the thing, but and again, you can't. Brady's awesome. What he did for the Patriots was unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, I think he really should have won 3 or 4 more Super Bowls with the Patriots. He really easily could have. I mean, crazy plays like the helmet catch, the fact that Asante Samuel dropped an interception in the final drive, the fact that Eli Manning just got out of the grasp of Seymour. There was some crazy stuff that happened in the one Super Bowl. A couple of Brady did his job. He brought them down and scored, and then the defense didn't hold.
He also did his job when they were down 21, 23 points against the Falcons. So look at that.
Well, and even the Eagles game, the Eagles Super Bowl they lost. I mean, when you have 540 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, I mean, it's like he did his job, and neither defense did anything in that game. But it's like, he's just unbelievable. But the fact that he went, like you said, you look at Favre, he did nothing when he left Green Bay. When Montana left Niners, he really did nothing. Yeah, I think he might have made the playoffs once. He even was telling Brady, don't leave. It's different. You go into a new system, a new environment, new teammates. He says, it's not the same. Just stay where you are. You'll do the most there. Brady left. And again, with no offseason because of COVID, guys he's never played with.
Right.
And true, they had their struggles early, but they're learning. That's their preseason. That's their training camp is the first, half of the season. He won the Super Bowl with them.
I know.
It's like that shows you anyone that says that Brady's not the greatest quarterback
They're
ever
wrong.
they're in denial. It's a hatred because he just is. He just is.
He's the Michael Jordan of football. You have to say that.
Oh yeah, without
This is as a longtime Tampa fan. The offensive line has never been good. In 2002, when we won that Super Bowl, we didn't win it because of our offense.
that was defense.
It was our defense. We had an awesome defense, which was eventually stripped, and our team fell apart.
Yeah.
Brady comes in. He just like Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning goes to the Broncos. They didn't have a great offense. What does he do? He makes that offensive line better. And how does he do that? Just like Brady. Throw the ball a little quicker. Call your protections. Know what you're doing. Yell at your fucking teammates when you get sacked or hit. Like, they know how to manipulate the offensive line to get the most out of them, make them better, and then all of a sudden develop cohesion, and then they look great.
Well, a lot of it's like these great quarterbacks like Manning, like Marino, Brady. You don't have to have as good an offensive line because they get rid of the ball in like 2.5 seconds, right? If you're holding the ball for 4 or 5 seconds, you're getting sacked.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Brady, he reads this is what makes a great quarterback, not having the strongest arm. Reading the defense is what does it.
Right.
You read the defense, you know, and you anticipate, and you get rid of the ball fast.
Yeah. And then what does he do? Then he says, it was the offensive line that did that.
Oh, he gives them credit.
And then he says, let me take them out to dinner.
Yep.
Let me buy them watches.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Build them up. Whereas the guy that's getting sacked because he's holding the ball too long blames it on the offensive line. The offensive line's hearing it from the fucking coach. And then on top of that, there's no appreciation after the game.
Yeah. Well, I remember Drew Bledsoe back before Brady, and I love Drew Bledsoe too. And one of the things that I really loved about him was multiple times and they were not good. The Patriots were terrible with him. But reporters tried to get him to throw his teammates, offensive line particularly, under the bus. And it was one, I don't know if he got sacked like 6-8 times in one game. I mean, he was getting hammered. And the reporters asked him, basically geared a question. I don't remember how they worded it, but it's like basically your offensive line sucked today. They let you down. And he just looked literally straight up, and I'll never forget his quote. He says, "The day I play the perfect game is the day I'll complain about somebody else's game."
That's awesome.
And he says, "We are all trying. We're all doing our best." He says, "I make mistakes out there too. We are all working to the same goal. We're trying to get, and he would not take the bait.
That's awesome.
Belichick, I remember I think it was Belichick was the coach, but it might have been the coach before that. It could have been Parcells, but it was, there was some cheap shot down the field, and the Patriots are not good and not playing together. And he made a point. This was in the paper, and made a point because I don't know, it's a wide receiver, running back was like getting up slow, injured, and getting taunted by the other team. And he says in the meeting, there's one guy that went down and stood up for our guy that's on the ground, and it was Bledsoe. He says, "You offensive linemen are the ones supposed to be our enforcers here.
Yeah.
And we got our quarterback going down and having to cut through the other team to say, 'Get off of my guy.'"
Right.
And he's like,
but that's a leader.
That's a leader.
That's a leader.
And so I love Bledsoe for that type of stuff. I mean, he was always a favorite of mine. And I was one of the people that really didn't want to go to Brady early on.
But Bledsoe was a great quarterback.
Yeah.
He was not a bad quarterback.
No.
And this is why I argue that Tom Brady was more valuable in that system than Belichick, because Belichick's system should have worked for Bledsoe as well.
Yeah.
And it didn't work as well. Brady brought some sort of intangible factor that made them great.
You can see that now.
20 years.
You can see that now.
Yeah.
And you could see it in the last probably 5, 7, 8 years.
Well, he's brought him to Tampa now.
But Belichick made the decision to stay with Brady, though. He saw that where a lot of people said no.
I think he had a lot of pressure. From what I understand from people I've talked to, Belichick was not convinced that he was going to have a winning season. He was convinced that he was going to get fired at the end of the season. He didn't think he had a lot of talent. And when Brady won that first game, a lot of people were hyped up about him.
Yeah.
And he was almost forced to do it because they saw some raw ability in Brady. And they won a game.
In New England, we were like 50-50. People were torn between the two. It was you had your not Belichick, but Bledsoe group and your Brady group, and people going back and forth. Even after he won the Super Bowl, people were still arguing about it.
Right.
Well, Patriot fans are loyal.
Yeah, but
they tend to be, well, not the coaching staff, not the team itself, but the team, the fans are great fans. They're very loyal to their team. They're very loyal to the players for the most part.
But one of the things that I noticed, this is my personal opinion, this is why I think Bledsoe could have done everything Brady did. Bledsoe had the much better arm than Brady and all this stuff. But what Brady did is he took the checkdowns.
Mm-hmm.
He would throw,
Yes.
like they said, his favorite receiver is the open receiver.
Yes.
And Bledsoe had such a great arm and was such a, number one overall draft pick, all this bullshit, He would say, okay, I got an open guy 7 yards down the field. But 50 yards down, I got a guy who's only triple covered.
Sure, squeeze it.
Yeah.
I can squeeze that in, and sometimes he would, He was that good that he was like, but Brady would look triple covered, wide open, I'm going to take a little 7-yard dump off. And that
Brady,
was a big, at least early on, that's what he did.
I think Brady also has a sense of tenacity about him too. Don't tell me I can't do
No,
something.
true, but not as much earlier.
Yeah.
You saw it at least later.
Yeah, maybe
When he was young, you didn't see that. But
Yeah.
as he started going, like people would say, oh, be careful the Patriots this year. Brady, I think, would eat his own kids for a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, this is what a quote the
Is that
NFL
why
radio.
he's so young?
Yeah, well, one of the who was an ex-player, who like they're in a lot of the NFL radio guys on Sirius will be, they're into, they know everyone. They're the insiders, And he's like, yeah, Brady could eat his own kids this year. So yeah, he does have that.
Yeah.
I will not lose. It's like I didn't lose. I ran out of time.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's Brady.
Well, I'm glad he's on Tampa now because we look pretty good. We just picked up Bernard, a pass catching running back who still has it. And hopefully AB stays with us.
Well, Brady's coming to the end of his career. He's only got maybe 10 years left.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, I don't know if the Patriots make it back, man. I don't know who they get in this draft. I don't know if they can.
They could go anywhere. They need a quarterback.
I don't think Cam Newton's the answer.
Oh, he's terrible.
I think Josh McDaniels will take over that team. I think Josh McDaniels will do well.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the system is going to survive.
I do like the a lot of the moves they made in the offseason. I think they're very interesting. They
You think you'll get Garoppolo back?
I don't know.
I mean, the Niners are going to probably pick up a quarterback.
Yeah, but I don't want Garoppolo.
And there's some projections that New England might move up to 7
Yeah,
to pick up Mac Jones.
I don't want
or
Mac Jones
Lance.
either.
No?
No, I don't. I'd stay away from the quarterbacks this year unless someone good drops. If they get,
I just can't remember in the last 20 years when the last time they had a top 20 pick.
Well, yeah.
Why not? But
They
they
didn't make moves for it.
Shit.
But they could get talent. But the kid I'd like, a couple kids I like, to be honest with you, they could get maybe even in the third round. Is that Mills out of Stanford?
Okay.
Is a potential
Yeah,
quarterback.
a lot of
They
people
could
like
pick him. Mond out of Texas A&M. Actually like him.
Yeah.
And Trask out of Florida.
You like Trask?
For a third, fourth round pick. Sure.
He's a one-rate quarterback in my opinion.
Well, like I said, for a later round pick, I wouldn't go first round with him.
I
wouldn't go second round.
avoid him because of the coaching. I don't think the coaching allowed him to think on the field.
Yeah, but
to make
he's going to have
decisions.
a year.
Yeah, but I don't think he'll get it. I think he hasn't got it now. And he's an older college quarterback.
Yeah. But I'm just saying those.
I think
types of
Mond
guys-
makes sense. Mond and Mills make a lot of sense.
But those Mills is the one I'd want number one. That's the
Yeah.
guy I would rather have. But I like Mond too, and I think we can get these guys in a later round.
So at 15, you're going to go for like a high
Depends on what's available.
stock cornerback, high stock.
Actually, depends on who's available because there's a lot of ways you can go. I like that defensive end out of Penn State is a good player. There's
going to be a lot of good. There's going to be a lot of good players. There's going to be some running backs and some.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of good players available.
We got a
15.
lot of running back. There's going to be. I think there's a offensive lineman out of USC that looks good.
You have a lot of running backs, but they're small running backs.
No, Damian Harris isn't too small. Damian Harris is.
No, he's not. But then they get hurt frequently.
Yeah, but I
And
wouldn't
they're
go
old.
there on
Some of them are
15.
old.
I wouldn't hit their 15 though. I wouldn't go that route. Depends on. I mean, they get Waddle out of Alabama.
I think Waddle is
You know,
underrated.
Smith out of Alabama is another one.
No, he's not going to be
Too.
available. I think he's going to be gone by then.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, one of those guys are going to drop. Waddle supposedly is better than Smith, except for the fact that he got hurt.
I
So
think
if you're
Waddle.
happy with his medical side, he would be a steal because he.
I think Waddle's a great pick. He's got the size, he's got the speed. An Alabama receiver.
Well, he's only
we know what they
5'10",
look like.
but he's thicker. But he's 5'10". Smith is 6'1", I think. So he's
6'1",
taller.
I
but
thought
skinny.
Smith was smaller. Oh no, maybe I'm
Smith
thinking
is
about the
skinny.
weight. Skinny. Yeah, he can make up with that. I'm okay with the 170 then.
Yeah. So.
But I'm scared. I'm scared that they're going to get hurt. That's the one thing about Alabama wide receivers. They do great in the league, but they never play a full season.
Yeah.
They hardly ever play.
So, but there's a lot of ways it could go. It'd be interesting. I'm not looking quarterback. I think.
Yeah.
I'd hate to overdraft them. And I think if they take.
You like Cam Newton then for this year? Or are you going to play Stedham?
I'd like to see what Stidham can do,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. And I heard somebody say this, don't draft Mac Jones, because they said the Patriots already have Mac Jones.
And
Stidham.
Mm.
Stidham is Mac Jones, the same type of a quarterback.
So why isn't he playing? Why even bother renewing
Cam Newton?
I
But
don't know.
he's Cam
Belichick's
Newton.
very loyal to him.
Newton?
Cam. He talks him up. Cam Newton made a lot of mistakes last year, but also didn't have an offseason.
Right.
But, I say this
New
too.
system.
Brady went to a new system and won the Super Bowl. So it's like Cam Newton.
But
Newton,
Newton,
Cam Newton's talented. He's got talent and skills.
he's got a strong arm, and
but it's one dimensional.
He's
It's a one dimensional.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's not. I don't think he's a good quarterback, like we said.
Well, he did go to the Super Bowl. He played really well that year, quarterback wise. But then
But he was a runner.
Yeah.
He's never been a good thrower.
Here's the thing. Well, he threw well that year. That was like his best year at quarterback.
Yeah, and he threw 50% completions.
And
That's his.
he got hurt the following year, hurt his shoulder.
Yeah.
And he was plant based at that point. He was 2 years or 3 years into his plant based diet.
That's why.
And so the question is, that shoulder ever heal?
Well, and I'll tell you this, and I do feel bad about Cam because he was a runner and a very strong runner, much better runner than a thrower. His running allows him to throw because he's not a good thrower. But he would get brutalized. And he got hit cheap shots upon cheap shots.
Oh, yeah.
And that wasn't. And I'm not a Carolina fan. I'm not a Cam Newton fan. But when I was watching those, and I'm like, that's bullshit to allow them to do that to him. If you're running, you're allowed to get hit.
And
but
they don't have
cheap shots, and that was bullshit.
And he hasn't had great receivers either. That's the other thing. They're not like.
I'd have to think who we had. I don't remember. I'd have to look back.
There's nobody that's really stood out as a receiver. I mean, you're gonna say Samuels or what's his name?
Who was the shorter guy that was fast?
Yeah,
For Carolina.
Steve Smith.
Steve Smith.
I think
Steve
he was
Smith, but that was
before
right.
Cam, or at the very beginning.
Okay.
Steve Smith was good.
I think he played for like a year and then he was traded to Baltimore.
Yeah.
But then after that, they haven't had a receiver. They drafted the kid out of Florida State, Calvin Benjamin, who didn't pan out that well. He just wasn't fast enough. Not the greatest hands. They had that speedster who plays for the Saints now. I forget his name. He did well receiving that year with Cam Newton.
Steve Sipens, I don't know.
No.
Willie Snead?
No. Willie Snead went from New Orleans to Baltimore. He didn't play with Cam. I'm talking about this kid was what's his name? He's like a punt returner and a wide receiver. He gets hurt quite a bit too now, but he's been like a journeyman. Oh man, what is his name? I can't think of it.
It's not Cordell Patterson. Is that who you're talking about?
No, not him. He's kind of like a Cordell Patterson though, but
I don't know either.
I want to say like Terrell Pryor or something like that, but it's not that. It's a something else. I don't know. Oh, we'll forget about it. All right, I think we're good.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. So,
longer than I thought.
all right, you go ahead and do the pitching.
All right.
You did great.
So we are going to spend the next, or finish off the year, thanking the people who inspired us to do what we're doing today. With their podcast. So Adam, see, I know you gotta
remember these guys.
Adam Carroll.
Yeah, Sean Carroll,
Sean
Sam
Carroll,
Harris,
Joe
Adam
Rogan,
Meekins,
Adam Meekins. There's
Greg Lehman, Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
And those are the guys that inspired us to talk about this shit and to do it. 2 years in the making. So we want to say thank you, give you some homage. And after that, we're going to do another pitch.
Okay, we also have set up the Patreon account for anybody that's feeling that's appreciative and wants to donate to help us keep this podcast going, and also a portion of what we take in, 25%, we will divide up to give to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. 10% will go to the SMA, Spinal Muscular Atrophy Association, and then the 5% will go to the muscular dystrophy.
That's it.
That's it.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
Just basically shooting the shit.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's all we're doing. And we're just recording it.
Yeah, like you said, we should have started this a half hour early because we were doing all the same shit sitting in
We
the
did.
living room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a camera. I had a camera in the living room, but
I will-
I don't think it recorded or saved anything. So.
I also want to get like a little fridge so we can start just having some beers.
Having some
in the process. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll do it
I'll
again.
come back and get beer.
I have a fridge. It's not bad.
All right, man.
Bring it in.